I'm ready to roll. Here we
You
go.
are. Great. Yes.
Oh, gosh. Woohoo! Here comes Maya, wearing a silk kimono, walking backwards. Now watching the guy off.
Good morning, Timothy. That was a nice dance behind the scenes, behind the curtains, actually. So it's very good to have you with us again. I can see that you're in a very beautiful location once again. And I cannot wait for you to tell us where it is and maybe not so much how you got there anyway. So to everybody who is watching us and listening to us on the different platforms, we're live streaming this session. Good morning. And thank you very much for coming to the 180th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And even though the summer has just begun here in Tokyo, and I believe also in other parts of Japan, well, we're once again here, Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, who works in not only Japanese politics, but also in advocacy and government relations and public policy as well, is here with us to deliver the latest happenings and tell us, well, what is important in Japanese politics that is also impacting your life in Japan and your business. Timothy, straight to you.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Today is July 21st, 2024. Maya, I'm located in a new area today because I couldn't broadcast deck of Santana. The internet is not very strong there. I'm in a new location here, you might notice, very close to Santana, but I think I'm having a little bit of connectivity difficulty, so please let me know if I break up, okay?
Okay, I will. Yes.
It's strong so far, I guess.
It's fine so far.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So once again, good morning, everybody. With what's going on in the United States and the Trump, the Republican convention and what has been going on there, there's a lot of realignment going on now. People are scrambling for the potential of a Trump 2 administration. There is some background movement going on. You can see that with Mr. Motegi. You can see that with Kono Taro and the comments that he made on the yen this week. The Major League Baseball of the United States is going to hold 2 opening games this next spring, with the Chicago Cubs and the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to play 2 games. This is so exciting, and it's what a testament to Shohei Ohtani and what he's done to fire up baseball, not just in Japan, but globally, and also the prominence of really skillful, highly technical Japanese players throughout the entire Major League and the minor league in the United States. So the Major League Baseball coming to Japan next spring is a pretty big deal. Inflation has crept forward once again. This last month in June, it was at 2.8%. The national average year on year is about 2.6, so it a little bit overshot it. The Prime Minister is not really happy with that. He's struggling with dealing with that. We've got trouble with the yen as well. He's not very positive about the movement that's going on there, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And this week on Thursday, I have a briefing on battery storage, energy storage on Thursday, Maya, at noon. We'll be giving a briefing on that. It's probably about 20 minutes, but it's on a policy issue that the Ministry of Economy and Trade is focusing on, and it lays out a plan for a rather long-term energy policy. It's very important. It's not for everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's a pretty major policy piece that we're going to go into in some detail. Maya?
Yes, we're going to have it at 12 o'clock on Thursday. This is July 25th, I believe. And if you are tuned in, you will be able to watch it on LinkedIn, also YouTube. For that, please look at the Langley Esquire's accounts there, Langley Esquire on LinkedIn and Langley Esquire on YouTube as well. So, Timothy, thank you very much. Before we continue, I would like to have a word of thanks to our sponsor, Kanchu.com. Yes. So Kanchu.com offers bilingual services in the fields of buying and selling homes, and also room rentals in Tokyo and Kanagawa. The room rentals are in the Kanagawa area, but if you are willing to buy a house or to buy a home in Tokyo or Yokohama, then you're very welcome to contact James Howell at james@kanchu.com. So, James and Kanchu.com, thank you very much for being our sponsors. Without you, you wouldn't be able to deliver these briefings nowadays. So, thanks again. And Timothy, once again, it is over to you.
Thank you very much. And about our sponsors, ladies and gentlemen, we so appreciate you signing on and you contributing and participating in these briefings. It's Japanese Politics One-on-One. It's from us to you. You get to participate too. We do this for free. And Maya, today is episode 180. In 2 more
Yes.
episodes, we have been 3.5 years, every Sunday, reporting to you on Japanese politics. So we very much appreciate it. But it's a contribution to the community. It's a contribution to people to bring them up to speed on what's going on in Japanese politics, hopefully to help people avoid issues that they might fall into, or just to level up the the understanding of what's actually going on in Japanese politics. The briefing that we're doing on Thursday, it's very forward looking. It's not, like I said, everybody's cup of tea, but it is critically important. And you're going to hear it first here. You hear a lot of the things that are going on in Japanese politics, geopolitics as well. You hear it here first because we're on top of things. But if you have an option for better briefing or some other opportunities to deal with your particular issue, give us a call and help us, support the continuation of this program. The Meteorological Agency, Maya, reported, and so of course the weather participates and contributes and agrees that Tsuyu finished. The rainy season finished on Thursday, and on schedule. The heat just went up. My God! So
Yes.
you felt it too, right?
Oh, I did so very much. It's like not really like a sauna, it's like a kiln already here in Tokyo. I believe, yes, but we do have some humidity, elevated humidity, which is not too bad, right? So it's it's over to you,
So
Timothy. Yes.
thank you. So this rainy season was the shortest on record, 27 days, Maya. And last week there were 9,105 heat strokes where ambulances were called. People had to go to the hospital. 9,000 of these. This last week, since people were a little bit more attuned to it, because of course the Meteorological Agency said Tsuyu had finished and now summer officially begins, people were a little bit better prepared. So there are only 194 this last week. But please take care, hydrate, as Maya always says, take care of yourself. But it's going to be a particularly hot summer, so please take care. Let's get on to what's going on in Japanese politics. Excuse me. The Liberal Democratic Party has announced the formation of an election committee. They've identified a chairman of that committee. His name is, what's his name? I just had it here. Ishimaru. He's in the parliament 12 times. He's been reelected 12 times. He is qualified as an independent. He doesn't belong to any particular faction. He's something of a floater, but he's along with the LDP. He's been the chairperson to form the election committee that will determine how the election for president of the LDP will be run, including the dates. So it's important. People are up for Mr. Motegi Notaro. Mr. Iba is lining up. There are other contenders that are weighing their options. Can I go? Can I get the 20 endorsements from my fellow parliamentarians to qualify as a candidate? It looks like right now there are 3 contenders plus Mr. Kishida. And Mr. Kishida has not said one way or the other that he's going to run. But as the incumbent, it's probably the best gamble for him, even with his popularity now, according to GG Press, at around 12.9%, very low. the lowest it's been for decades, actually, the appreciation for the prime minister and his cabinet. But the Diet won't go into session for until January, constitutionally. More likely, it's going to be an election for the LDP president. And depending on what that outcome is, if Mr. Kishida continues on as prime minister, he'll probably reshuffle the cabinet and move towards a lower house election in the fall. Alternatively, if one of the contenders becomes prime minister, then immediately, of course, Mr. Kishida, the entire cabinet must resign. It becomes vacant as a consequence of that. There'll be a new cabinet, a new prime minister, and more likely than not, an election based on the results of the new president of the LDP and the new prime minister. So there's a lot of action going on. We're in a very delicate 2-month period now. Yes, today's the 21st, right? The 20th is probably the most likely day. It's not set yet, but it's the most likely day for the ballots to be counted for LDP president. That means that the the campaign will start around the 8th of September, culminating 12 days later in a ballot. They could go one more week. Constitutionally, they must finish their ballot by the end of September. So there's only 2 Sundays in that period towards the end of September. The first one is the 20th and then the 27th, and then it falls into October. So they could push it out a little bit to the 27th, but my money is on the 20th. The election campaign will start on the 8th. So the committee for running that campaign has been, the chairman has been decided. By the 28th of this month, they will decide the rest of the, maybe 11 members of the LDP who will be in the committee to decide that. And it doesn't include Mr. Motegi. Although he is the Secretary General of the LDP, he will be strategically removed from that as a potential candidate or as somebody that, definitely, I think he will be one of the candidates. Let me see, what else do we have here? On Thursday, the LDP, Mr. Hagiuda, you might remember him, of the 5 people that were running the Abe faction after the assassination of Mr. Abe, there was a group of 5 or 6. It ultimately ended up being 5. They removed Mr. Shimomura, and one of the 5 was Mr. Hagiuda from Tokyo, and he was very close to Mr. Abe, very prominent, and in the kickback scandal, he received a tremendous amount of money, but strangely enough, it was calculated just below the threshold of Nisenman-en between 2017 and 2022. So those were the calculation days that they used to quantify how much kickbacks each individual had. Mr. Hagiuda was just below the threshold. Anybody that registered more than Nisenman-en, whatever that number is in US dollars, or actually 20 million yen, excuse me. Everybody that fell above that was either required to be removed from the LDP, excuse me, for a period of time, or to give up their party seats. Mr. Hagiuda was in that category where he had to give up his party seat, but he was the Tokyo regional chairman of the LDP. And as a consequence of a couple of things, one being that in the recent election, excuse me, the recent election for Tokyo governor and 9 members of the assembly, one of the members was an LDP. There were 4 members of the LDP. They wanted to increase that to 6 or 7. They ended up with 2. And one of the LDP members that lost was in Mr. Hagiuda's election district. So he kind of stinks as a consequence of that. Plus the LDP reaching, for a stretch target of having maybe 6 of the 9 seats, ending up with only 2. He's got a lot of egg on face, so he resigned from that LDP position in the Tokyo chapter. It's a big deal for him. It's a kick down the stairs. But also on Thursday, an LDP member who is in the lower house, also from Tokyo, resigned from the LDP. He didn't resign from his parliamentary seat. He didn't turn his badge in. Excuse me for that, Maya. Manabu Hori, 4 times elected to the lower house, 52 years old, formerly an Olympic speed skater, was his offices and his home were searched by the public prosecutor's office because it was alleged that he was taking money that he received from the kickback scandal and distributing it among his constituents for condolence money, for getting married, for kissing babies, and greasing the palms a little bit. And the money came from this kickback scandal that had been going on for the last 20 years. So he was raided. The LDP wants nothing to do with that. The LDP is kind of like in atomic poison a stage where nobody really wants to touch them. Tokyo Governor Koike didn't really want to have an endorsement from the LDP. Won as a consequence of that. The Constitutional Democratic Party, fighting very hard to unseat her through the vehicle of Renho, came in 3rd place. So the LDP is just really on tenterhooks. The election of the new prime president is a big deal, and so a lot of people smell blood in the water and they're attacking it. I want to get into some of those issues, but the fact that we've got the first scandal is Mr. Hagiuda, who is in the Seiwakai, the Abe faction, has now fallen to a pretty low depth. He's still in the lower house. He still wields a considerable power, but he has been tweaked. And then to have this resignation from the LDP as a consequence of spreading money out in the dirty politics and money and business, the reputation that the LDP is frequently criticized for. So the LDP is really on tenterhooks there. We've also got, let me see, the LDP and and Komeito are talking about, you remember the billboards with the let's kick out the NHK party. The controversy there, they had the billboards for 46 individuals, and the let's destroy the NHK party sold some of the slots that they had. They had 26 candidates, and they sold the slots for these billboards to different people and made revenue from that. Not exactly a breach of the law, but Komeito and the LDP got together on Friday to close that loophole. So it's politics in action. It's showing, even though the Diet is not in session, the LDP and Komeito basically can control how bills are pushed through and made law, or at least the regulations are adjusted to accommodate the law. So this is pretty quick action. And when the LDP and Komeito form an alliance on any issue, since between the two of them, they control a majority of the lower house seats and a majority of the upper house seats, they can achieve anything that they want as a consequence of that. Hold on just a second. Where is my... Okay. So
It is okay, yes.
Pardon me, what were you saying, Maya?
I said it's okay, yes.
Okay, good. There's also the Constitutional Democratic Party leadership election in September. It's not just the LDP that must select their leader. Also, the Constitutional Democratic Party is going through the same process, and also Komeito is going through their process too. Let me focus on each of those individually because it's critically important. The way Japanese politics moves, the LDP is the top dog. It is in a coalition with Komeito. So even though they have differences of opinion on some things, it's the numbers that matter. So LDP, Komeito, and then everybody else is in the opposition party to some degree or another. The Communist Party is on the far, far left. And then in between them and maybe Komeito, maybe more right to Komeito, is maybe 4 or 5 parties, the major one being the Constitutional Democratic Party. Its leader is Kenta Izumi, young, good-looking, very articulate leader. He's been in the position, this is his first term as leader. There has been some controversy there, some leadership challenges. It's been somewhat stable until we had the election for governor and the 9 seats that were available in the Metropolitan House. The Metropolitan government has 127 seats. 9 of those seats were up for election because members had died in office or quit or been kicked out for some shenanigans or another, and they needed to be filled at the same time that the governor's election was. So the LDP was, they had, as I said earlier, they had 5 seats of the 9. They wanted to get 6 or 7 of those, so they had candidates in 7 seats, and they ended up only winning 2. So that's a real slap. The Constitutional Democratic Party, on the other hand, ran a candidate for governor, Renho. And the Constitutional Democratic Party, since for the last several months, has run in elections against the LDP and beat them soundly, maybe in 6 or 7 elections, including for governor, for the by-elections that were maybe 2 months ago. The LDP has lost to the Constitutional Democratic Party for the last series of elections that have occurred regionally as well as nationally. So Renho running for Tokyo governor, what a feather in the hat that would be if the Constitutional Democratic Party was able to win the governor's race too. It wasn't such a long shot. She had good prominence. She had been in the upper house for 6 times, so that's 24 years she's been there. And she's an attractive, articulate socialist. So there are some people in Tokyo that have that leaning, very strong leaning. Ultimately, current governor Koike won, but with the Constitutional Democratic Party and Renho, she decided to cozy up to the Communist Party to get more of those votes getting towards her. That strategy didn't quite work for her. Ishimaru-san came in with a very clever internet strategy. He came in 2nd place. Renho came in 3rd. Between the two of them, between Ishimaru and Renho, they took votes than what Koike got. So the vote was split, but I mean, there was 56 candidates after all. So something like that was bound to happen. The lesson here, though, is that the Constitutional Democratic Party, through the vehicle of Renho, cozied up to the communists. And that doesn't bode very well for Mr. Izumi as the leadership position becomes open in September. So he's dealing with a couple of sharks in the water. Everybody, I think, remembers, everybody on this program, they're all, I mean, all of you are Japan hands of one caliber or another, but everybody remembers Ichiro Ozawa. He's a LDP genius. He was critical in several administrations. He left the LDP. He started a new party. He is now currently with the Constitutional Democratic Party, which is a combination of several parties since then. But he is still a powerhouse and probably not likely to be a candidate for a prime minister or for president of the Constitutional Democratic Party. But he carries a lot of weight, and he's making noise against Mr. Izumi for his handling of the Renho candidacy. Similarly, Noda Yoshihiko, former prime minister when the Socialist Party took over the administration of the government for 3 years and then fell out of power as a consequence of the triple disaster. We all remember that, but he was prime minister during that period of time. He is also in the Constitutional Democratic Party, and he is making noise about Izumi. So there's some changes underfoot. I don't know if he can survive it. Should he not make it, the next in line would be obviously his Secretary General. They are on good terms, bad terms, frenemies perhaps sometimes, best of buddies other times. That's the way Japanese politics always work. like in Washington, D.C., if you want a friend, get a dog. I think that also works here. Let's talk about Komeito. So Komeito, the leadership of Komeito is with Natsuo Yamaguchi. He's, 71 years old. He's in the leadership position for 15 years. His 8th term as leader of Komeito. Komeito is in a unification, an alliance with the LDP. It's a pretty strong one, but Mr. Kishida doesn't have the skin with Komeito or with Mr. Yamaguchi that Mr. Abe had, for example, or with people inside the Seiwakai had with him. So it's a little bit iffy, but with him, and he's announced he's probably going to change. He's been doing it long enough. He's looking for new leadership. Once again, probably his second in command would step up. They have a convention in September, but he let out something just in a press release or in a briefing he had 2 days ago, that he said he'll stay on until the next election of the lower house, even though the convention is in September. And he indicated that in the fall there would be an election for the lower house. So he's in cahoots with the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party. So I don't know if it was a slip of the tongue or if it was just a signal that is a kind of acknowledgement that other people pretty much expect that there will be an election for the lower house as soon as the LDP figures out who is going to be their president. And so we just moved from one shakeup to the next. We're in a kind of a quiet zone right now between now, the diet has finished, and the election of the president of the LDP. So a lot to report, and we'll be keeping our eyes on that. So with regard to who is going to be the candidate for prime minister, recently, over the last 7 days, we report weekly here, so there's been movement every week. Mr. Kono Taro Aso and Mr. Suga have been relatively quiet these last 6 days, although you know that they've been busy. The people who have been somewhat prominent, of course, the prime minister, he's doing his prime ministerial duties. He hosted the Pacific nations for 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that's a very big deal. So he was prominent there, in the news a lot, on television. But Mr. Motegi, Mr. Ishiba, and Mr. Konotaro were pretty prominent in the news, making statements and saying things. So, without opening their kimono and saying, this is what I'm going to do, you can see what they're attempting to do. So with regards to Mr. Motegi, the most likely person to throw his hat in and say, I want to be prime minister, and Mr. Prime Minister, I thank you very much for appointing me as the Secretary General, probably the second or the third most powerful position in your administration. Thank you for that. But now I think you stink, and I want your job. Not quite that way, as you would expect, but he did say in several stump speeches that it is time for the prime minister to acknowledge that in the 3-year term that they have, you can achieve what you've set out to do in your policies. 3 years is long enough. Saying without saying it, 3 years is your time, move on. You haven't really been able to do everything you want to do. It's time for somebody else. For Mr. Ishiba's portion of this, he has been somewhat prominent and being a little bit kissy-faced with Mr. Kishida, saying that, the prime minister, all of these issues that Japan is suffering from, the yen, the economy, the defense scandal, it's not really all his fault. He can be forgiven for attempting to run the government. And so, let's be friends. And if you decide not to run for president, or if you run for president, please remember that I supported you. I was kind of nice and I didn't hammer you too much. Konotaro, on the other hand, came out, he's the digital minister. He came out criticizing the treatment by the Bank of Japan and the Ministry of Finance about the yen fluctuation and the weakness of the yen. This is somewhat out of character, maybe not for Konotaro, but out of character for a minister to criticize another minister or another area that is outside of his bounds. He is a minister. He's supposed to do his job. He's not supposed to bleed into anybody else's. I sense what he's trying to do is mirror the comments that Donald Trump made about the strength of the US dollar and the weakness of the yen. He made these comments, and Konotaro coming out and saying something along the same lines that the Bank of Japan, you need to rein this in, you need to strengthen the yen so that the people don't suffer, and I'm the champion of the people. That kind of storyline. It was effective for about a nanosecond. He was called to the mat by not only the Hayashi, the chief cabinet secretary, but also Mr. Suzuki, the minister of finance. And the very day that he made these comments, he retracted them and said, look, it's a very complicated situation, and I'm sure the minister is doing the best that he can, and it's a very complicated situation. I shouldn't have stepped into that. So he is trying to, like I said, it's the 2 months before the LDP selects who their president is going to be. People haven't announced what their candidacy is, but you can see this alignment. There are a couple of people that we've considered to be viable candidates that you're not hearing too much about. And so the way the ground looks now, it looks like Kishida, Motegi, Ishiba, perhaps Konotaro, and we still don't know how Mr. Suga or how Mr. Taro Aso is leaning on these. And as you know, Taro Kono is in the faction of Mr. Aso, and that faction still exists. So moving on, the defense ministry scandal, we reported on this last week, has continued to snowball. There were more than 100 members of the self-defense forces and within the Ministry of Defense who were reprimanded and punished. There was a resignation in the administration for the defense chief, not the minister. The minister has decided to, what would you say, give up 1 month of his minister's salary as kind of repentance for the scandal and taking blame for it. But people are getting hammered. The prime minister is getting hammered by people that are in the LDP, and particularly those outside the LDP, that somebody needs to take responsibility. This scandal, this leaking of confidential information, the leak, there's no evidence that it leaked outside of the confines of the self-defense forces, but maybe that's only the story that we are hearing. It could be more serious than that, but it is serious in any event that confidential information is not being treated as it should be. You know, Japan wants to be a member of the Five Eyes coalition of like-minded countries that are sharing defense intelligence information. They don't want to share it with Japan because, you know, defense intelligence information leaks like a sleeve, according to some pundits, and Japan just can't get their act together. So this is a very serious accusation for this administration, and particularly with regard to, you know, there was the NATO conclave in Washington, D.C. Everybody was there. The prime minister left Washington, D.C. and the NATO summit, and he went to Germany. He spent a day with the chancellor there talking about, you know, defense assets and collaboration on mutual defense, that sort of thing. And now we have some other issues coming up that have a coalition of Air Force fighter pilots joining in multiple training. And if Japan can't put a cap on their own security, nobody really wants to play ball with them. And so that's how serious this has been. There's more to report on that as it unfolds. We hope they put a wrap on it. But a lot of serious things need to happen. The law has already been changed to account for economic security and also military security. It's just putting those wrappers and training people to accommodate the confidentiality agreements that are in place. They just don't treat them. And many people in the defense agency have said, we just didn't know what the law was. We didn't know, you know, how strict it was applied to us with that particular piece of information. So you'll be seeing a lot of changes probably in the defense ministry going forward. Like I said, the Pacific Island nations joined. They were in the, if you're familiar with Tokyo, the Shiba Koen. They have rather old but a very prominent Prince Hotel there, and 18 island nations joined, many of them by prime ministers. It was a very big deal. I was on the grounds, police dogs, many police, lots of security police. The prime minister was there, as was the foreign minister. This is her invitation. Japan is the host. It hasn't been held for at least 7 years, so this is the first time that it's been held. It's supposed to be every 3 years. The last time it was supposed to be held, it was in COVID, so it's like a big catching up, and they did achieve a lot. There were, let me see, collaboration in 7 areas. This is somewhat reminiscent of Japan, South Korea, going to China and talking about 11 specific areas, not the dicey ones, not the ones that are very controversial, but how do we share disaster information? How do we work with AI and automation and those kinds of things? Not the difficult issues, but similarly here, there were some difficult issues that they needed to talk about because China is very aggressively working on the island nations too. It's got 2 of them. It's got the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu, where it has Chinese assets, construction projects, and at least in Vanuatu, they have a police force that's stationed there, 8 guys who are patrolling the streets. So this is a pretty big deal that the Chinese are beginning to make inroads into the Pacific Islands. And so Japan is going very, very aggressively forward, together with the United States and Australia, as you can imagine, to bolster this relationship. So in 7 particular areas: technology, connectivity, climate change, people-centered development, and security. All of this involves, for example, laying undersea cables to connect these islands together and feed more information to them, helping them with their own security, sharing defense assets, as the United States and is sharing like Coast Guard assets with some of the Pacific Island nations, and Japan sharing, or actually gifting, Coast Guard cutters to the Philippines. There's a lot of activity going on there. At the same time that the 18 nations were meeting in Shibakoen, China had their own summit with the 2 island nations, Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands, with their prime ministers at the same week that the island nations were meeting in Tokyo. So this area of concern, this area of controversy, continues to grow, and I think you can expect there to be a lot more. And the pace of change, I think everybody notices it, is if you pay attention to this weekly briefing, it's really increasing. Who would have thought that we would have had this much important stuff to talk about every week for the last 3 years, but it is increasing. Domestic bankruptcies are on a rise here in Japan, 22% year on year, and it's just beginning. So they're afraid that there might be 10,000 bankruptcies by the end of the year. So the momentum is picking up. This is because of a couple of factors. One of them is that during COVID, the Japanese government provided very low interest loans so that these companies could stay afloat, even though they weren't generating revenue. The Japanese government was giving them subsidies, giving them low interest loans with a 3-year payback at very low interest. And that 3 years has ended, and now it's time for these companies to begin repaying maybe Jumayen or Nijumayen, or depending on how much they received from the government, over a 5-year period. And many of these companies, particularly in the services and in retail, just can't make it. So they're calling it quits. The other reason that these companies, mostly small and medium-sized companies, not the larger ones, small and medium-sized companies, the reason why they're folding is because of the labor shortage. We all know about that, the decline of the Japanese population, the number of kids that are graduated from schools, and the Japanese government is feeling it too. It used to be 15, 20, 30 years ago that the highest place that the graduates and the universities would aspire to was in the government. They wanted to be Japanese bureaucrats. They felt some passion or some honor in working with the government, and that's not the case anymore. In fact, as far as the self-defense forces are concerned, they only hit 50% of their target goal for recruiting this last year. So it's throughout the entire nation. and the businesses are feeling that as well. The price reductions, I'm sorry, the price rises that have been going on because of the inputs to production and the yen. Most people are importing and foodstuffs and, for example, retail, clothing, that sort of thing. And the prices just continue to rise to accommodate the lower yen, and the consumers are just not picking up with that. And so the sales have declined there. And also the echo from the pandemic, as I said earlier, 3 years, now they're starting to have to repay the loans that the Japanese government gave them. Moving on, the yen closed out on Friday at 157.48. As I mentioned, Mr. Trump said just this last week, the US dollar is too strong. I'm going to bring it down. And all of our trading partners, the Koreans, the Japanese, their economies are their currencies are so weak, they need to be strengthened up so that the competitive edge is a little bit more balanced out. I'm going to take care of that because I'm going to be your next president. So people are picking up on that. Mr. Motegi is picking up on that. Kono Taro is picking up on that. So there's going to be a lot of action. Watch the yen. The yen could potentially go to, it's 157 right now. It could potentially go to 170. Richard Katz had an excellent article that was published just this last week explaining that. There's going to be a lot of volatility. Even the prime minister said, there's more pain to come. I apologize for that. We're trying to work on it. That was a statement that he said just this last week. I'm almost through, Maya. I've got two more things to talk about. We talked about the fighters, the Euro fighters who are doing joint exercises here in Japan. That is culminating this week, and it goes on for about 15 days. It's a very big deal. 30 aircraft from Germany, France, and Spain will be augmenting the air self-defense forces throughout Japan, Chitose in Hokkaido, Misawa down in Ibaraki as well. Japan's F-2s and their F-15s will be in joint exercises. A lot of these planes, the Euro fighters and some of the American fighters, are coming from Alaska, where they're doing exercises there. It's pretty startling that all of the, there was the NATO summit just 2 weeks ago. It's a big deal there, and falling out of that, things just happen almost instantaneously. This has been in preparation for years to have these joint exercises. So all of the things that we talk about that hit our radar, they've already been in process for a long time. It's just that we're only getting news of it now. So it's the same thing with so many other things. For example, the Philippines and Japan signed their reciprocal access last week. I reported on that. They had the 2+2. The defense minister, the foreign minister met in Manila. They signed the agreements. This week in Tokyo Bay, right behind me, they had joint exercises with the Philippine Coast Guard and the Japanese Coast Guard here in Tokyo Bay. So things happen at a very brisk pace. They've been in plans. We hear about that only at the last hour, so it's important to keep on top of things. But in any event, the fighter jets coming in and packing the airways here is a continuous process. It's just beginning to start now. From July 25th to the 22nd to the 25th, that's starting tomorrow. They have an exercise called Nippon Skies, where the air self-defense forces join with Germany's Luftwaffe. This is the first time for Germany's Luftwaffe to visit Japan. It's the first time for Japan and Germany to have joint exercises. This is probably one of the points of discussion between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor last week. But this is just an enormous change from what we originally perceived Japan to be as the peace constitution and holding no offensive military assets. That thing is all on its head. In August, Rising Sun drills are a massive exercise, including Italy's and EU fighter jets as well. My last comment today is about tourists, Maya. This is your area of expertise. The tourist numbers in Japan have reached yet another record. There's 1 million more tourists right now than there was at the peak before COVID. COVID hit in maybe October, November, and now we have, even at this point in time, it's July, We've already exceeded that by 1 million, and we are expected to go to 17.78 million by the end of the year. Many people come in from all over the world. Actually, the greatest number is coming from Korea at 4.4 million. So it's what? It's maybe 25% is from South Korea. From China is in third place, Taiwan and the USA. The amount of money that they infuse into the economy here is just really impressive. 8 trillion yen so far this year. That's about 50 billion US dollars for 2024. So you love them and you hate them. You know, if you want to climb Mount Fuji now, you have to pay a fee. There's a registration. It's implemented this year. It didn't used to be like that. If you wanted to go climb Mount Fuji, you could just pick up your stuff and go climb them. Now it is being more regulated because everybody that's coming into town, they want to climb Mount Fuji. They want to buy knives. They want to get kimono, and they want to have a very expensive dinner. Everybody has friends who have come to Japan. That's kind of the hot button items: kimonos, knives, and expensive dinners. And you've heard these stories from all your friends as well. The Prime Minister expects 60 million. So this year, 17.78 million as of today. We've got another 5 months in the year left. The Prime Minister expects 60 million. That's what? Almost twice, three? No, it's 4 times what the number is now by 2030.
Yes, but if you allow me, that is the cumulative number of outbound and inbound travel. So they expect 20 million of outbound Japanese, and then up to 40 million coming to Japan. So, yes, sorry for that. I just wanted to, to avoid misunderstanding.
Thank you. So I wasn't aware that it also included outbound. And currently the number of outbound numbers is very low because going to any place else in the world using Japanese yen, it's far more expensive. Don't shut off, Maya, because I'm wrapping up now. Put your face back up there.
Okay.
There you go. So keep the audience going, right?
Okay.
They're tired of looking at me. But the other thing that the Prime Minister said this week, and it addresses not just the outbound, the inbound too, the national parks of Japan. There are national parks throughout Japan. They are owned by the Japanese government and managed by them. The Prime Minister said he wants to build hotels on these grounds. So heretofore, they have been exclusive for camping and visitors and stuff like that. Commercial interests were restricted, and now he's saying, I want hotels built on these grounds. So that addresses Japanese, and probably the greatest number of tourists are the people who are Japanese traveling internal to Japan, and only a small portion of that are going overseas. But I imagine there'll be a rise in that as the economy improves here. But also, the foreign tourists that come here, the repeaters, the number of repeaters is so high. And if you've already been to Kyoto, you've already been to Tokyo, you want something a little bit different. And I think this is the Prime Minister forward-looking and building other areas for them to visit and spreading the wealth throughout Japan. And I can hear you saying it, Maya, why didn't anybody think about this 5 years ago? Because it was obvious. It's obvious to people who are watching this that you're going to run into a brick wall if you don't address this now. Anyway, that's about it for me, Maya. I'm curious how the questions might come in and what issues I need to be corrected on, or what areas we can embellish a little bit further. But thank you very much, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you, Timothy. And we have already accumulated quite a few questions, but before that, I would like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Houze Inc. And Houze Inc., like Kanchu.com, offers bilingual services in custom home design, construction and renovation, plus commercial building construction. So to benefit from their services, please contact Hana Urushisawa Howell at Houze Inc. You'll find the description and contact details on YouTube and also on LinkedIn. So thank you very much to Houze Inc. for sponsoring us and making these podcasts possible. Timothy, thank you very much for once again for the delivery and letting us know what happened. Yes, if you don't mind me saying this about travel and tourism, as you said, the domestic or the Japanese travelers are the most numerous in the domestic travel field. And this has been actually the struggle of the Japanese travel industry to send out Japanese travelers, 20 million Japanese travelers. For quite a while, it happened in just barely in 2019, just before COVID hit, there were 20 million outbound Japanese, and this was really a huge achievement by the Japan Tourism Agency and so on. But otherwise, they have always wanted to reach the number of 60 million, which is combined, outbound and inbound. So that's from me for about travel and tourism. And now we're going to dive into the questions and answers. Timothy, I lost you for a moment. I hope that all is fine, and I hope that you have water or something else near you
I
so that you can hydrate.
Sorry, I don't. I signed on a little bit late. I was scrambling a little bit, and now I've got people walking along the beach coming by and saying, "Hey, are you okay? What are you doing?" Talking to this bush.
To the bush. Okay. All right. So this tells me also that we shouldn't keep you too long there in the sun because it's easy to dehydrate. So let's go through the questions as quickly as possible. And to
I'm good.
everybody,
Thank you. Sure.
yes, everybody who is listening to us, do not hesitate to share your comments and questions either on LinkedIn, in Clubhouse, or on YouTube. And I'm going to get there and read them out to Timothy. So the first question comes from Greg.
Hey,
Greg, thank
Greg.
you very much for tuning in this morning. Okay, so Greg writes, I see that Ishimaru-san has really stepped up his internet presence, going as far as playing Mario Kart with a famous YouTuber. However, if all the young voters voted for him, they still couldn't overturn the institution of senior voters. What is your take on the future of the Tokyo governorship
My take on the future of the governorship.
of
So
Tokyo?
she's
Yes.
okay. Well, she's got another 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's solid. Her record has been very good, although there's some people that are critical of her. Some of the policies, for example, what's going on in Guyane and the cutting down of the trees and the redevelopment there. But there are other issues, for example, the crowded trains and the influx of foreigners and how she is managing, the revenue of the government. But I don't think the criticism is that strong. I mean, she won very soundly, 60% of the vote she was able to collect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the Tokyo governorship is in pretty good hands, and she doesn't have that character trait that you see in some politicians, that once they are reinstated, then they go off on a tangent or they do something a little bit out of character. I don't expect that from her. She is a very savvy politician. She is, prime ministerial quality. She could viably run for prime minister herself. She's decided to stay with Tokyo. I think that was a good move for her. So I hope that's somewhat responsive, but I don't see any troubling signs for the current governor right now.
Oh, okay. I may be reading too much into Greg's question, but I think that he's also asking about going online and, just engaging younger people online.
With
Because,
Okay, playing off of
yes,
Ishimaru's experience, right?
yes, yes.
So this lesson that Ishimaru has taught us is a big deal, and everybody's looking at it. Everybody's wondering how we can replicate that. So yes, online and social media will take a more and more prominent role in elections going forward, and you're going to see, particularly some of the younger politicians, because for all of us who have been doing this, there's a certain age gap beyond which people just really have difficulty understanding what social media is. How do I interact with it? How do I engage it? So you've got Ishimaru, who is a very young politician. I think he's 41 years old. Um, engaging with an audience that normally he wouldn't be able to attract. He standing on a bus or a truck and with a bunch of microphones only addresses a certain number of people. NHK will pick you up and might broadcast you, but with the experience that we have of Ishimaru, I think every politician is picking that up. And the old guys, they probably have a base of voters. The older voters, the more established, more retiring people in the population will invariably vote for them. But the younger people coming up, I think they will share more and more power and more strength, and they will come out if they can be addressed and inspired through the social media. They are more likely to vote. So in the current election, the voter turnout, I think, was about 40%, which was about the voter turnout the last time the governor ran. So it's somewhat stable there. I don't think the voter turnout was impacted largely by Ishimaru's use of social media, but it did definitely turn the tables with regard to Renho. I mean, Renho is a complete flip over. So the Constitutional Democratic Party is really bearing down on that. So I hope that's a little bit better addressing Greg, but a great question.
Yes, and I also wonder whether Ishimaru actually did all that campaign by himself, or he had an agency.
Oh, definitely.
He had an agency, you
Definitely.
think?
I mean, it's so hard. I mean, social media management and dealing with it. You know it. I mean, it's your area of expertise too, Maya.
Yes.
It's hard to do it with just the internal resources that you have. It takes a lot of time, a lot of skill. There's a lot of technique to it that is just new technique. It's just, it doesn't come as second nature to anybody. How, you know, the algorithms work and what people key off of, and how you influence their psychology using this medium. So it's a whole new world.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And yes, from Greg, Timothy answered the questions very well. So
Yay.
Greg, thank you for the feedback.
I
It's
was trembling because
important.
the question was coming from Greg, you know.
Yes, and Greg has been here in Japan for a long time, and he has a lot of expertise too.
Yes,
So,
he does.
Greg, thanks
Yeah.
a lot for listening and for the feedback, immediate feedback. It's important for us to know that. Okay, and Yuka said we have to get you a hat, Timothy, and I really agree with her. So maybe next time we'll get you one of those sombrero hats, so that it can keep
I
you.
do have a hat, and thank you very much for pointing that out. I was working on Santana yesterday, and so there's a little bit of couple of grease marks on it. It's a brand new white hat, so I thought I'd better just leave that alone. But yeah, and the
Okay.
sunglasses. I don't think the sunglasses quite work, so I'm trying to do this sans sunglasses and hat. So
All right. Yes, maybe
and
next
walk.
time we can get you a new one.
A
Right.
sombrero
And
sounds good.
a sombrero, yeah. I think that it's going to be quite effective in keeping your head cool and, giving you a shade so that you don't struggle with the sunshine in your eyes. Okay. So now we have another comment and question from Hiroko-san on LinkedIn. And- right. Yes. Did you hear this, Timothy?
No, I didn't.
Oh, from Yuka. She's happy that you have a hat. So hopefully next time we'll use it. Or you will use it, right? Okay. So thank you, Yuka. And then what I want to continue with is the comment and question from Hiroku-san on LinkedIn. So Hiroku-san writes, joint exercise with EU. There is a there are joint exercises with EU nations, and PM Kishida is attending the NATO convention. And also NATO, sorry, is opening an office in Tokyo. And then, what is your take, Timothy, about the sequence of all these events? So, what are these events implying? Is there a possibility that Japan will join NATO in the near future? I think you froze, Timothy. Okay, Timothy has frozen, so hopefully. Okay, yes. We'll get him back, and I don't know why. Okay, he cannot hear me probably. All right. Yes. Yes, if you can fly. Yeah, it could be that his computer has. Oh, yeah, I lost him. Could be that his computer has overheated as well, because sometimes when that happens, you just lose connection. And right, so let's see how it is. If he joins in a couple of maybe 10 or 20 seconds, that will be good, because we still have quite a few questions there. So, Timothy, let me try to call him actually. It may be. Oh, oh, you mean the midweek on Wednesday? Yes, that's the. We are going to talk about the documentary. Well, or it's a short movie, actually, 30-minute movie about third culture children and also third culture adults. And we're going to talk with the director and the producer of the movie, and her name is Mary Robinson. So she herself is a third culture kid, and she's now based in the United States. She works for Disney, and she has worked for other studios as well there. And she has identified some, challenges to children who grew up as, third culture kids. And third culture means children of international marriages, also children who belonged, to families who were born to parents of the same culture but were raised in a different country. So this is really an interesting issue, because yes, it happens to quite a few children. Yes, we have Timothy back now, and yes, thank you very much, Yuka. I'm looking forward to having you with us on Wednesday too. So, Timothy, can you hear me now?
Can.
Great. Okay. Did you hear the question of Hiroku-san?
No, just as you were getting ready to ask the question, my cell phone died because of the heat. So you guys were
All
so
right.
right. I guess on the video, I wasn't paying that much attention, but the sun bearing down on me was also bearing down on my iPhone,
Right.
which is tied to my laptop, and
Mm-hmm.
so now I'm in the car. I've got the air conditioning on full blast to cool the phone down.
Good. And to cool yourself as well, which is important, I believe. Yes. Okay, so let me once again read the comment to you, and apologies for having to do this again to everybody who heard the comments
Sure.
and questions the first time. So Tomoko-san wrote that Japan has been participating in joint exercises with the EU nations. PM Kishida, Prime Minister Kishida, is attending the NATO convention, and the NATO office is probably going to be opened here in Tokyo. What is your take on this sequence of events? Meaning, is there a possibility that Japan joins NATO in the near future?
Um, yeah. Uh, so NATO is a North America Treaty Organization. I guess it's feasible that Japan could join NATO and contribute to NATO protection of the North Atlantic. I'm sorry, not North American, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Um, More likely, it needs to morph into a different kind of organization that includes the NATO assets and also Japan, the United States, Australia, the South Pacific, that sort of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, this pace of military expansion is just remarkable. And I think the first thing that needs to be addressed, the prime minister tried to do it this session. He promised he would do it while he was prime minister. The term of prime minister is 3 years. He promised when he was stumping as prime minister that I'm going to change the constitution. The LDP has promised the nation that one of the precepts of the foundation of the LDP is to change the constitution and to make it more representative of the Japanese people.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't successful there, but they tried to actually in the closing days of the session try to see if they could railroad something through. But changing the Constitution is not going to be a railroad job. It needs to be very methodical and well thought out. So I think they will change the Constitution to accommodate some of these changes. But yeah, it's what's going on with the military, and we report on what's going on with the fighter jets. But things are going on at all sorts of levels. The submarines, the manned drones or the unmanned drones, all of the intelligence gathering. So it's a massive. We're just seeing a part of it, and we can only report on some of the more significant ones. But it's going on at a really tremendous pace. And it's not just NATO; it's also the South Pacific Island countries, Australia, the reciprocal rights with the Philippines. It's just massive.
Right, it is indeed. And I also think that we talk a lot about Japanese politics here because this is the topic and this is what we actually want to deliver information about Japanese politics. But at the same time, it seems that Japan also needs to be careful and has to be, this is a delicate issue here in the Pacific because, of course, Japan feels that there might be, some threat. Some threat coming from China and maybe Russia, but at the same time, China and Russia feel threatened as well by the expansion of NATO, right? So it is something that we probably do not think about very often, but the fear there is mutual. And so there is very little talk about that at the same time. Well, but thank you for answering the question, Timothy. And also we have a comment from Greg as well on LinkedIn. So Greg writes, I am the result of Polish and German born in the US and living in Japan, the third couch. Oh, sorry, that's about the next week. Okay, thank you for saying that, Greg, letting us know. If you have time on Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, please join us again on these channels so that you can share your experiences as a third culture kid too. Okay?
Yeah.
And then, yes. All right. And then once again, we're going back to, okay, LinkedIn. Patricia, thank you very much for your question. It is about the election posters in Tokyo, right? The Tokyo election posters. Patricia writes, do you know when those political posters are going to be removed?
They should have already been removed. The election's over. I don't know why some of them are still up, but usually they have a team of carpenters that go out. They've already been engaged, and the contracts have been signed. They've probably already been paid. So I don't know why they're still up. I don't have a good answer for that, but maybe let me look into it. I've got one of the guys on my team is very tight with the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. So I'll see if I can find out on that very important issue, Patricia, and report the next time we get together.
Yes, because Patricia has, she mentions a particular poster that's talking about the one with a woman in a red blazer and fingertips crossed across her, yes, and so on. Okay, let's talk about this next time. So hopefully we'll have more information about this. And yes, I also, in the beginning, Timothy, of this briefing, you mentioned that one of the LDP members has been arrested.
A speed skater.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you say that again? Sorry, I was talking about.
Yes, a member of the lower house, formerly a speed skater. So based on his Olympic performance as a speed skater, he ran for office and he won. And he's been in the Diet for 4 terms. He was a member of the Abe faction and he was one of the fellows that received a lot of the kickback money. And it was reported that he was greasing palms with some of that money, and he was raided and then turned in his membership to the LDP.
Right. Is that Mr. Hori Manabu?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. No, I was just wanted to make a comment there because you mentioned, and it has been in the news, that he has been handing out presents and money and also, money at funerals and such things. But I am not sure because here in Japan, this is, part of the let's say, part of the tradition that when somebody passes away, people here express their condolences by sending some money to the family, right? And also flowers and so on. So I wonder how much of that talk, I'm not condoning him, okay, but I wonder how much of that talk about him handing out money is, is just part of his, like an anti-election campaign against him, and how much is really, a breach of protocols and breach of law.
I think it was probably pretty significant. So even a member of the Diet, it cannot be criticized for giving money for bereavement or for congratulations on getting married or for kissing babies, that sort of thing. But it's when they go a little bit overboard. And for Mr. Hori, the allegations are that he went considerably overboard for particular people, and it was reported, and the public prosecutor's office got wind of it. And whenever the public prosecutor's office gets involved, it's like for most of us here who live in Japan, if you're in an altercation or if you're in some kind of a situation where the police arrive, you just don't want to be involved. The police generally have a tendency that if you're somehow involved, we're going to question you. You're going to be, perhaps suspected for being guilty. They're just going to wrap you into it. So you just want to walk away. Their conviction rate is the highest in the world, and they're very successful in getting their man, whoever that man might be. But it's a pretty drastic way of enforcing justice here in Japan. It receives a lot of criticism. But that being said, I think for Mr. Hori, yeah, if the public prosecutors are getting involved, they have the goods on you. They already know that. So I think it was probably smart of him. He was probably ordered to, given the complexities of what the LDP is going through now. You have been implicated. We're going to consider you guilty. Turn in your badge. Turn in your membership to the LDP. We're going to report that to the press because we don't want to be touched. We don't want to be tainted with that kind of reputation. You were with the Seiwakai, you were with the Abe faction, you received the kickback money. We want that all to be gone. We don't want to have any part of that in the LDP anymore. So I think he got kind of pincered out, but who knows? He might stay in the Diet, he might remain, but if he's found guilty, he'll have to give up his badge. And then his seat will be once again thrown into a by-election scenario where somebody else needs to fill his seat. That's done twice a year, by the way. It needs to be done every 6 months. So that's just a little bit of background for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
We okay?
Timothy, can you hear Yuka?
No, I can't.
No. Okay, Yuka, go ahead and then I'll... Yeah. Right. Yes. Thank you, Yuka, for that. Okay, Timothy, Yuka's point is that, probably, she used the word majime, or very sincere, for the Japanese, and probably the Japanese law is too strict, because when you compare what happened to Mr. Hori, and then the fact that, for example, Elon Musk is going to donate $44 million per month to the Trump campaign. So you just cannot compare these two things, right? They're so different, and there is what does it say about the Japanese way of seeing things in politics?
Oh, wow, that's a deep question. Yeah, it's difficult to compare the two systems of campaigning, of election finance, and that sort of thing. Here in Japan, it is very strict. There has been violations after violations. You'll remember Kakue Tanaka, who
Oh
was
yeah.
a prime minister and some would say incredibly filthy in collecting money and inserting that his legacy would survive for generations, which it did. His his faction produced the largest number of prime ministers in LDP history. So the fact that he was able to skim and collect contracts. So if somebody, for example, wanted to not just sell airplanes, but sell bottled drinks or something like that, and they needed government approval, Tanaka was effective in saying, okay, I'll give you the access to the market and you'll sign these contracts, but from now on, you will take some of the revenue that you generate and you will filter it back through some technique or another so that I continue to benefit from that because you're getting this market share as a consequence of my involvement. And so the government, after they were successful in getting rid of Tanaka, but coming with other prime ministers want a piece of that action too. So they don't want to be too strict on it, and they want it to apply to others, but not to them. So it's a very slow process of tweaking this thing. And particularly the politicians are the ones that benefit from the lax application of the law with respect to them. So as you could see from Mr. Abe's administration, he was very tight with the public prosecutor's office. In fact, keeping the public prosecutor that he liked beyond his retirement age in violation of all sorts of regulations and restrictions so that he wouldn't be hammered legally for some of the scandals that he was involved in. So it's a very long, slow process. And Japan has thousands of stories about how people are skirting them. And they really are trying to make Japanese politics clean and respectable and something that is admired by the Japanese population. It's a very hard thing to do. The LDP has long been known as kissing big business, being tight with big business, being in bed with them. And part of that is accurate. But there should be restrictions on, how much money you're going to receive or how much you're going to give, how many people can come to your briefing breakfast or your hagimaskai without having to register their name. And we've figured that one out now. So that was a loophole that was in process for 20 years and really just really geared up by Seiwakai, by the Abe faction. They were the captains of this. They developed it into an art form, and finally it was identified. So that's another one. So it's just this slow process of, whack-a-mole. I hope that's a good enough explanation from my perspective.
Right. Right. Yes, I believe it is. Yes. Thank you,
So
Yuka.
I feel so strange here. I'm grateful that I'm in the car and the air conditioning is blasting, but I've got these dead spots where you're talking to Yuka and I don't hear anything. I feel like I should turn the music on or something.
Oh yeah, that's really strange because it started happening just a week ago, and before that there was no difficulty actually hearing, from the people in Clubhouse. Well, I'm sorry for this. I honestly don't know how to deal with it at this point of time. I'll look into this issue. And then, okay, it looks like we have gone through all the comments and questions. Patricia, thank you very much for specifying which posters you had in mind. And so, Timothy, just for your information, Patricia actually meant, I misunderstood that. I apologize for that. It wasn't about the Tokyo election posters. It was about big other political posters for people who are obviously they have them pasted here and
Yes,
there.
they have them. Okay, so the story here is you'll see these all over town. If I own a piece of property or I own a brick wall that faces,
Mm-hmm.
that's outlining my property, I can put a political poster there. I like Mr. Abe, so you'll see a lot of sometimes Mr. Abe posters too. But frequently, what you have is somebody who is a supporter of their candidate or maybe their representative in their district. And they'll just, they might be asked, or they might be a relative, or they might just be a diehard supporter, and they put their posters up, and it's completely legal.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for this, for specifying this. And Patricia, I hope that it helped you, or yeah, it answered your question. So with this, Timothy, thank you very much again. Yes. Okay, Timothy, a question from Yuka. Yes. All right. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Right. Okay. So, Timothy, Yuka's question is about Mount Fuji and the fees. So that Yamanashi Prefecture implemented the fees, and now next will be Shizuoka Prefecture, or maybe it's the other way around. Yuka, please forgive me if I mixed it up. So, Yuka's question is: first, Mount Fuji is national monument. It's not a monument, right? But it belongs to the country. It doesn't belong to this prefecture or that prefecture. Why is this that the two prefectures are doing, just introducing these fees at different times?
Okay, so the national government has made a decision to restrict access, and then they distribute the administration of these regulations to the prefectures who control access to different parts. So Yamanashi Prefecture is going first. They're the ones that I think are the most critically hit. And you watch TV, and um, it's it's just funny, all of the Japanese who are going, they're fully decked out. It looks like they're going to Mount Kilimanjaro for 3 weeks. They have all the boots, they have the walking stick, the hat, everything's decked out. And then every once in a while you have a foreigner that shows up in flip-flops or tennis shoes or something, and they focus on that, and they kind of highlight the fact that these guys, they're coming to climb Mount Fuji, and it's a dangerous climb, and they're prepared for it. And then they show videos of these guys huddling um, the mountain shacks because it's rain. It's blistering rain, and they're unprepared. So that's and it does concern other people who are climbing the uh, the mountain. But the specific response is that different prefectures have that portion of the mountain's access. And yes, it's not only a national park, but it's a national shrine too. Maya, you've never climbed Mount Fuji. I find that so strange because you are a mountain guide when you were in Bulgaria, right?
True.
But I think
Yeah.
it's not challenging enough for you, so you've just lifted your nose at it. But I've climbed it 4 times, and
Oh, wow.
oh yeah, and yeah, it's definitely something that everybody should do. But it is a national shrine, and you're supposed to maintain some decorum there. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like you you'll find trash on it, but you're not supposed to leave trash on the national shrine.
Right.
And they have
Mm-hmm.
people who are walking the route too, who are administrators or who are making sure everybody's okay, and they're following. But you can't have a drone up there, and when you're up at the top, there is a shrine up there too. People pay their respects to. So
Right.
it's a very significant landmark.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for this too. Thank you, Yuka. Thank you, Timothy from Yuka. All right.
You
So
froze
with
on me.
this, did I? Oh, I can see myself moving on screen here. Okay. So great. And before we say goodbye once again, I would like to introduce our sponsors here, Kanchu.com and Houze Inc. So if you are in, if you're willing to actually, if you're looking for home in Tokyo or Kanagawa, Yokohama, please contact Kanchu.com and James Howell there. And if you want to redesign or design your home, you can contact Hanako Shizuoka Howell at Houze Inc. So please do not hesitate. They offer bilingual services. So even if your Japanese is not fluent and if it is not so good yet, so you're not going to have any problems there. You'll get customized services and your needs will be met with a lot of attention. So Timothy, thanks a lot once again. We're going to be here once again next Sunday at 8:20 in the morning on all the channels. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe and give us a like because we like to know that you have been there. Also, LinkedIn the same. Do not forget to give us a follow. Also, when you see the announcements and the posts of these briefings on LinkedIn, remember to hit attend so that you receive a notification a couple of minutes before the session begins. And that's all for the moment. Timothy, thanks a lot. And to everybody who stayed with us, have a great day. And if you have missed part of this session, you can always rewatch it full in, after we're over on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well, or go back to Clubhouse and listen to the whole session there. Well, thanks a lot, Timothy.
Thanks, everybody.
I
Thank you to
hope
our
that
sponsors. Thank you, Maya.
yes, and you need to stay hydrated because people are worried about you,
Well,
not just me, okay? And we need to find you a hat, a sombrero
okay.
hat next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Maya.
Thank you.
Oh, you